Coming up on DFE News, it looks like Biden's DOJ targeted his administration's political enemies. That's what new evidence shows, but how high up does it go? Also, the government shutdown will soon be the longest in U.S. history. Any signs of a breakthrough? And it's been almost 2 months since the death of Charlie Kirk. His friend and senior director of Blexit, Pierre joins us to talk about Charlie and the growth of Blexit. We've got news for you, those stories and more right now on DFE News. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on DFE News, News Done Right. I'm Jeff Kirk. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment so everyone gets to see DFE News. So much is going on. Let's get right to it. New evidence shows the last administration may have weaponized the justice system against Republicans. The House Judiciary Committee released new documents Thursday showing Biden's FBI targeted several Republicans, especially in battleground states. The findings raise serious questions about whether the DOJ at the time worked with state prosecutors to bring criminal charges against lawmakers who support Trump. The operation, called Arctic Frost, was a coordinated effort between then Attorney General Merrick Garland and D.C. prosecutor Jack Smith, who issued 197 subpoenas against Republicans in Congress and against U.S. citizens. Some of the subpoenas include demanding the private phone records of several Republicans, with a D.C. judge forbidding the phone companies from notifying the lawmakers. The D.C. judge who signed those subpoenas? James Boasberg. Remember him? He's the one who blocked the Trump administration from deporting foreign criminals, even issuing a court order to turn the planes around mid-flight and return the illegals to the U.S. As the investigation continues, members of Congress are calling for articles of impeachment against Boasberg for his role in the operation, which Republicans are calling a massive abuse of authority. Gridlock continues in Congress as both sides are refusing to blink in this staring contest known as the government shutdown. The shutdown passed the 30-day mark Thursday and has now been closed for the entire month of October. Republicans want to pass a continuing resolution to reopen the government with the same spending levels as before, but Democrats are refusing to sign any agreement unless Republicans agree to extend Obamacare subsidies. Government employees remain out of work and unpaid, and now those who support government customers, such as contract employees, are being affected since the government can't pay for their services. President Trump has floated the idea of using the so-called nuclear option, which, while unpopular, would make it so only 51 votes are required to reopen the government instead of the usual 60. If the two sides don't reach an agreement, government benefits like food stamps will stop beginning in November. 2 federal judges have ordered the government to continue paying SNAP benefits during the shutdown, but it's unclear what authority courts have over government spending. On Truth Social, President Trump said he's instructed his lawyers to ask the court how they can legally fund SNAP. If the shutdown lasts past Tuesday, it'll become the longest shutdown in U.S. history. The previous record was 35 days, beginning in December of 2018. The United States Navy recently turned 250 years old, and of course, a lot has changed since the Continental Congress created it in 1775. DFE's Catherine Joyce tells us more about the Navy's semi-quincentennial and what sailors think about some of the more recent changes.
You just like to use big words, Jeff. That just means the Navy's 250th birthday was on October 13th, and boy has she grown. After a slow start, because there was no naval work to be done after the Revolution, the Navy was revived and given official tax support in 1794. Since then, our Navy has become the most powerful in the world, with more than 330,000 active duty personnel in 2025. We spoke with 2 former sailors about the Navy and more recent military changes. From the height of enlistment during World War II to the weapons and even the style of leadership, the Navy has seen many changes over the years. Tony Krumrein enlisted in the Navy in 1989, right out of high school. He served 6 years as an E-5 Petty Officer Second Class, working in communication systems, and spent 2 years on the USS Chandler, a guided missile destroyer. One big change he saw was the number of women enlisted and working on even the smallest ships.
I was on a destroyer, which was about 350 guys on it. Now they can have women on there. Before it was just guys only. Some of the larger ships, like tenders, things like that, had women on it, but our small ship only had guys on it. With the tight quarters on the ship, it'd probably be a little difficult, and they probably do it. I mean, I'm sure they figured it out, but it would have been different having girls on there.
14 years earlier, Bob Heinecke joined the Navy right as the Vietnam War was ending in 1975. An aerospace engineer in aircraft maintenance on the USS Nimitz and USS Okinawa, he served 29 years, retiring as a commander in 1997. The biggest difference he remembers also has to do with female personnel.
There were very few women in the squadron. I went to one squadron, and this one woman became pregnant. She could switch to civilian clothes immediately because they had no maternity uniforms, and she wear civilian clothes, and then in short order she was discharged. Nowadays, I don't think that happens like that.
Tony served under 2 presidents, and Bob served under 7, having also been in the Air Force for 7 years before joining the Navy. When asked what they thought of the current commander-in-chief, both agreed that they appreciate President Trump's leadership and willingness to say it like it is.
I personally believe that. I think the the service members appreciate him as a leader. He's a stronger leader. He's more outgoing. He's more verbal. Says what he wants to do. He's more on the offense. I think it seems like he's talking to a lot more people than our last president. He's a lot more engaged, and it seems like he is a lot more for the military. Building it up instead of breaking it down. I like the fact that he's not trying to be politically correct all the time, to where he say it how it is.
No trouble with Trump's leadership. Many on the other side of the political aisle do.
But Tony pointed out that as a civilian in the 21st century, he hears more about the president now than he ever did when he was actually serving in the Navy. He attributes this to the modern media.
Like now you can just turn on the news and every day you hear about the president doing something. Back then, I bet, George Bush or Bill Clinton, maybe once a week you hear about them on the news doing something. Now here you hear it a couple times a day. So I think now they play a lot more impact on the civilian world again, hearing about stuff than you actually would in the military.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth also received high marks from both men for his directness, honesty, and willingness to bring the military back from woke to warrior.
I like the fact that he wants to build up our military again. I think it was getting, for lack of better terms, a little too woke.
He was a serving Marine, if I remember right. Been under many different departments of the, head of the Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense. And, he has the president's support, and I am okay with that. I am okay with him.
Bob says President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's attitudes and policies have probably helped the Navy achieve their recruiting goals ahead of schedule this year.
The recruitment goals are being filled. Many years I was on active duty, they were not meeting their goals, or I was concentrated on the Navy, worried about the Navy, but the other services too were falling short. Not this year, I understand.
So yes, a lot has changed since 1775. But Tony points out that some things remain the same over 250 years. The Navy still uses signal flags and signal lights on their ships, charts their courses with sextants, and plays reveille every day. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks for that report, Catherine. Bob also said that another thing that still hasn't changed in the Navy is that people with no connection come together, suffer, and experience things together, and grow together as part of a team. The FBI is claiming to have stopped a potential terror attack in Michigan planned for the night of Halloween. Federal agents raided 3 different homes in the Detroit area early Friday morning, arresting 5 men between the ages of 16 and 20 and seizing multiple firearms. Police described the suspects as homegrown radicals, but are believed to have ties to foreign terrorists. The FBI discovered the plot after monitoring an ISIS-affiliated chat room and learned the Michigan men had been training at a local gun range and discussed conducting an attack against an unspecified target on what they referred to as Pumpkin Day. FBI Director Kash Patel announced the arrests on X, saying, "This is what defending the homeland looks like, and vigilance saves lives." It's been almost 2 months since the assassination of Charlie Kirk sent shockwaves not just through the conservative movement, but throughout all American culture. Joining us now to talk more about the future of TPUSA and Blexit, an organization that reaches out to minority communities, is Pierre Wilson, Senior Director of Blexit for TPUSA. So Pierre, what was your initial reaction when we lost Charlie Kirk?
I was heartbroken. I was in shock. Charlie was not just, my boss, but he was my friend. I like to say my brother in Christ, because one of the things that we first talked about when we met was our love for the Lord. And I think that connected us immediately. And we spoke a lot about our families and, our wives, our children, and how much joy they bring us. So we really connected immediately. I had known Charlie for years, but I didn't know him truly until Blexit merged with Turning Point in 2023. So getting to know the man over the last couple of years, it made it so devastatingly heartbreaking for me and my wife. And I think I'm still processing it to this day, but the mission moves forward.
Yeah, absolutely. There was definitely something about Charlie that connected with people to where people, even like myself, who even had less of a connection to him than you did, it affected us very, very deeply on a very profound level. So Pierre, let's talk a little bit about you and your background. I think we have a video that kind of describes your transition into more conservative ways of thinking. Let's see if we can get that video to play here.
I'm Pierre Wilson, Senior Director of Blexit and the founder of the Blexit chapters. I want to share why Blexit isn't just another movement. Blexit is the hands and feet of real change in minority America. From the streets of Baltimore, Atlanta, Chicago, and Detroit, to the campuses of our nation's historic Black colleges and universities, we are there. We don't just talk about the issues, we get directly involved right in the heart of where liberation is needed the most. Unlike the left, we don't believe that the solution to fixing problems in Black America relies in more government handouts. That's why we address the root causes. We know that so many in the community don't chase after that dream job because they lack the confidence. But why? It could be as simple as they've never been taught how to write a resume. So we have resume services. We do job training. We believe with the right resources and tools, you can do more for yourself than whatever the government can provide you. We know that if someone ends up on government dependency, their children are more likely to end up on it as well. We are making a genuine impact, one community at a time. And here's something remarkable. Over 70% of our leaders once identified with the left, but they've made the powerful choice to break free from a victim mindset.
Well, you know.
Now they're helping others do the same, reclaiming control over their own lives and futures. We are on the front lines, delivering logic, truth, and empowerment to those who need it the most. If you are ready to be a part of a movement that's not just inspiring change, but actively creating it, now is the time. So partner with us and let's take this cultural revolution to the next level.
So Pierre, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about the events of the video?
Yeah, well, for so many people that grew up with me, I'm sure it was probably not as much now because they're used to it, but it was probably a shock initially for me to be loud and proud and bold about my conservative values, because I was the opposite for many years. I was speaking up a lot about liberal values or what I thought were the values that I held near and dear, and I come to find out everything that I believe really was a lie. So, just to tell you a little bit of my backstory, I grew up in a largely single family home. My mom was divorced 3 times. She was married 4 times. We were moving from place to place. I didn't come from a silver spoon, nothing against people who did, but I didn't. I came from a very rough area. A rough background, rough neighborhoods. I watched people get killed in front of me from a young age. I very much lived a rough life early on. And in addition to that, it wasn't just what I was seeing, but what I was hearing around me that made me believe that my life will continue to be tough, because I was told things that, like, because I'm Black, I would have to work 10 times harder than my white peer to accomplish the American dream. There would be some white man around every corner that was going to hold me back. And I still to this day am trying to figure out who this white man is, because I haven't met him yet. But I was told that there was going to be some white man around every corner that would hold me back, and cops would look at me different. And, I look back now and I realize I was being fed the victim narrative, and I believed it, so that led me to marching with, Black Lives Matter at different points, and just really down a place that we see so many Black Americans today. But there were a couple moments that led to my transition or not even transition, but realizing that I was actually a conservative through and through, and that I just had been told to believe certain things, not that I truly believed them. There's a difference. I've been told that I was supposed to believe certain things, but I realized that I actually did not truly believe in those things. So I don't know if you want me to jump into those now, but I definitely know there was a couple of different moments in my life that led me to where I'm at today.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to hear about some of those events.
Yeah. Well, I love sharing this story, because there are so many individuals who are still kind of in the place that I was back then that may recognize it faster than I did. So there were some key moments. One, was my mom. So I had to write a paper. I was in school, middle school, high school. I can't remember which one, but I had to write a paper at the time on the presidential election. I wasn't obviously old enough to vote, but my teacher wanted us to go home, do some research, go to the library, wherever you could, learn about the 2 candidates. And then if you could vote, who would you vote for and why? Well, the 2 candidates at the time were, it was George W. Bush versus Al Gore. And at that time, I wasn't really super into politics. I always had a little bit of an itch for, history and some political things, but I was much more worried about girls at that time and everything else. So the whole Republican Democrat thing, wasn't really worried about it. So I went home. I went home and I started looking at both candidates. I realized really quickly that I would vote for Bush. If I could pick one, I would vote for him. I liked what he stood for more. And I wrote the paper not thinking anything of it. And like I always do, I showed my mother, and so she could proofread it. And she got halfway down the paper and she could see where it was going. And she immediately, I still remember the look. She was looking down at the paper and she looked up at me with this look in her eyes that was serious. And she's like, "You cannot turn this in. We do not vote for Republicans in this household. Don't you know Republicans don't care about Black people?" And she goes into this tangent. And I remember thinking, wow, I feel like I'd done a good amount of research on him, and I didn't see or any of that. What you're saying, like what you're saying is news to me, because I feel like the things that he's advocating for are things that actually are more beneficial to us than what Gore is advocating for. But nevertheless, don't question mama, right? Like, gotta listen to mama. So I went and I rewrote the paper on Al Gore, turned it in, got an A, but it sat me weird. The second moment, because there's 3, but the second moment, I'll be quick with this one. I attended college at a historically Black college university, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And at this time, I am a full-blown Democrat. Everybody who, is kind of raised in the Black community and raised as a Democrat, we all know that the true presidential election is the Democrat primary, because you're not even going to consider the Republican candidate. So whoever comes out of the Democrat primary is who you're going to vote for automatically. So the real battle is, who are we going to pick to represent us? The battle at the time was between Hillary and Obama. And I didn't know much about Obama. I felt like he was still relatively new to the scene. I know he was a senator, but he was newer to the scene. Hillary had a little more history. So we were in this forum, and they were talking about this, and they were passing the mic around on campus. They were passing the mic around to people, and every person was saying, "I'm going to vote for Obama. I'm voting for Obama. I'm voting for Obama." The mic got to me, and I said, I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet because I don't know much about Obama yet. I know a little bit more about Hillary, so I'm still kind of learning about him. I'm trying to see. I thought my answer was innocent. It wasn't. It got dead silent in the room. Everybody turned and looked at me. The young lady who got the mic behind me, she took the mic and she goes, "How can you, as a Black man, say you don't know who you're going to vote for?" And I'm looking at her and she's looking at me because I'm thinking she's going to finish her statement. No, that was it. It was that he was Black, I was Black. That was enough. And I was like, man, that is weird. Like, what if a white person said that? What if a white person said, "I'm going to vote for Hillary because she's white"? That was really weird to me,
Yeah.
But
Your
I
opinion is
moved.
assigned to you.
Yes, it was. It did not sit right with me, but at the time, it still wasn't enough. The last moment was the one that I guess where I red pilled myself. Um, I was just up late one night. I was watching videos of, different Black conservative influencers. And I remember thinking that they were all crazy. I was like, these people are nuts, and I'm writing things down they're saying because they're saying stuff that I'm like, this is not true. I know what I've been told. This is not true. I'm writing these things down. I go research all of these things, thinking I'm going to fact check them and just feel good for my own self, knowing that they were wrong. Well, they were right about pretty much everything that they were saying. The single motherhood rate, Black on Black crime, welfare system, all these things in a way that I'd never heard it, they were right about. And I remember, now I can laugh about it and I talk about it openly and freely, but for a while, and especially that night, I felt very confused. I felt lost. I felt lied to. Uh, I definitely, was not happy with the fact that I didn't hear this side of the story. So just to fast forward for you really quickly, Candace and Brandon had just launched Blexit. It was brand new. I had DM Brandon. He said that they were just planning to do these shows across the country. And I thought the shows were great. I was like, this is going to be great to do these shows, but we need to bring this to the community because I have no one to talk to. Everybody around me is a liberal. So I took it upon myself to launch the very first Blexit chapter in North Carolina. Thank God they didn't send a cease and desist letter to me because they didn't authorize it at the time. And I started documenting the work we were doing, reaching out to people. And Candace saw it. She DM'd me 3 months later. She hired me as the first employee of Blexit. And here I am today running the whole thing. So it was definitely a God story, a thing that the Holy Spirit was a part of. I know for a fact that this is where he wanted me to be. This is where he placed me.
Yeah, he doesn't make many mistakes in that fashion. But that's a great personal arc of your transformation and your coming around to that point of view. So talking about the aftermath of Charlie's death, we know there's been some changes to TPUSA itself, but what about to the Blexit organization? Have there been any significant changes there?
Yeah, so we're seeing growth. Blexit is, department under Turning Point. So, very similar to the other departments, we're seeing a lot of outreach of people wanting to get involved, people just wanting to support us in whatever way they can. I think we've added close to 60,000 new leads, new people who have got involved, joined the movement in one way or another. That's huge for us. We've now crossed the 200,000 mark of people who are part of the Blexit network. So it's been a lot of growth. And I like to say that Charlie is still blessing all of us beyond the grave. And the reason I say that is because this was his dream, to see Blexit grow, to see our student side grow, our National Field Program, Club America, to see our TPUSA Faith team grow. This is all he wanted. This is what he wanted, and it's coming to life. So yeah, we're experiencing that growth and we're very thankful for it. And for that reason, we've expanded to more of a city. We have chapters all over the ground. We call them state chapters. We've gotten so big that we're now big enough to do city-based. Instead of just saying this state, we can just focus in on individual cities because we now have enough leaders to even do that across the country. So it's been a huge boom.
Yeah, that's incredible. It reminds me of what Joseph said to his brothers: "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." And I think that's directly what's happening here as a result of the horrific death that God is using to reach more people and bring them into his family. Pierre, there's still a lot of questions out there about the circumstances around Charlie's death. How is Blexit handling Candace Owens' recent claims about Charlie's death?
So yes, it's been tough to navigate for sure. I think a lot of people are hurt right now because not only did we lose our leader, did we lose our the Turning Point founder, and just more importantly, a good man, a good Christian man, right? I want people to know. That's why I always say this. I'm like, I know people know the public figure, but this was a good man behind the scenes. He was a father, he was a husband, he was a friend. He was just a great man. So it's affected a lot of people deeply. I think at this point in time, we know that people are going to grieve differently. Do I agree with everything that everyone's doing and the way things are being handled? No. But at the same time, I do understand people are going to go about things differently. People are going to grieve a bit differently. As far as Blexit goes, we have to stay focused more than anything on the mission that is in front of us and to not lose this momentum. Charlie's death cannot be in vain. Again, especially because we know his vision. We know so strongly what he wanted from us. We have to deliver even more so than ever. So I've been keeping the team focused on the task at hand. We have a lot of new people coming in, a lot of people who are looking for ways to get involved, and we want to make sure that we're reaching every single one of them and making sure that they have a great experience when they're walking through the door at Blexit, and that they can carry out the mission locally, on the ground, or whether they want to donate, whatever it looks like, whatever help looks like for that person, we want to make sure that we reach them and we give them the opportunity to help.
Yeah. So like we've already mentioned, there's been a pretty significant shift in the numbers of Black and minority voters moving more towards a conservative side. Is that due to all the work that you've been putting in with Blexit and your team? Or are there some larger cultural shifts that have been going on beneath the surface that helps account for that as well?
I think it's both. I mean, Blexit, I will say this, this team, and I know people are probably like, you're biased because you run Blexit, but I have to say, my team is one of the hardest working teams. I've been in the movement for a long time, and I've seen a lot of teams working, and this team is working late hours. Sometimes we're on we're on at midnight at night. We're working, we're doing whatever it takes to make sure that people can join the movement. And we've been doing this for years. So I think we laid the foundation, and we're starting to see the fruits of that. More than ever, but I think it doesn't happen at the foundation that wasn't there. So we've done a lot of work leading up to it that I think has helped us be ready for this type of growth today. But we have to acknowledge that the cultural shift, right? What happened to Charlie, the tragedy, the murder, this shook a lot of people. I mean, church attendance is up. Even at my church, my wife and I were talking about that. It was absolutely packed, and it's still packed. Sometimes churches see a decline. They say, I always watch the trend. Some churches see a decline at the start of football season, and there was no decline. If anything, it was an uptick. People are going to church more. You see a lot more people just wanting to get involved, whether it's Turning Point or other groups. You just see this shift. You see people asking more questions. I have people who I went to high school with who have not asked me a single question, but until now, after Charlie was murdered, they have reached out and they're like, that is absolutely crazy. And they want to know more, because they're like, if somebody's willing to kill him, I don't know that I want to be on the side of that person, like they're willing to go and kill him for giving an opinion. He was having a debate. You can't get more American than that. His weapon was his microphone, and someone killed him for it. Right. So that shook a lot of people, and that made people realize maybe I'm actually on the wrong side of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting gears a little bit, what was your reaction or your thoughts about all of the Planned Parenthood locations that have been closing recently around the country?
Joyful, happy, thankful. It's a blessing. Abortion, which I know they like to say, we provide other services. Let's be very clear. These are abortion clinics. Okay. And majority of the abortions taking place were those in the Black community. A lot of them were strategically placed in locations where they were set up so a Black mother could easily access an abortion. It was very clear who they were also targeting. So I am very thankful, because this is something that I know I fought for. There's been a lot of advocates out there who have fought for it for years. So long overdue, long overdue.
Yeah, totally agreed. So, Pierre, what is your hope for Black voters and other minority voters with the upcoming midterm elections for next year?
I want them to stay engaged, stay involved. I always say the real work actually happens between the election cycles. So we've been doing the work that it takes to make sure that we reach these people, not just when an election comes around, and we encourage them to make sure that they make their voices heard. And I want them to shock the world again, like they did at the 2024 election, where 21% of Black men voted for Trump, and you saw a huge shift in Hispanic voters. I want them to continue to shock the world, and I want the left to realize after these midterms that they, in fact, do not own minority voters anymore. The game has changed. Things are different, and it's a new day in America.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we got to do the work, because the work really does matter. So, Pierre, we've had your information on the screen, so people who have any further questions can reach out and get in touch with you. That's Pierre Wilson of the Blexit organization for TPUSA. Thank you so much for joining us today and getting your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
For our final story, a couple of boys in St. Louis stopped a burglar from breaking into their favorite ice cream shop. 9-year-old Adonis and 10-year-old JC had become friends with Aaron Roche, the owner of Aunt Jamie's Ice Cream, near their homes in St. Louis. One day, while heading down to the shop, they saw the window was broken and someone inside. They tried to call Aaron, but when they were unable to reach him, they called police. The boys stayed and kept an eye on things until police arrived and arrested the suspect. The owner of the shop said the boys liked to come down for ice cream, hang out, do homework, sometimes draw, and if that he didn't have a close friendship with these kids, the robber would have walked away scot-free. Always reassuring to hear stories of kids doing the right thing. Good on those boys for looking out for their friend. Well, that's it for now. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, comment, and engage with us so that YouTube and all the socials push it out to more viewers. If you're interested in becoming a DFE sponsor, you can click on the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Thanks for watching DFE News. News done right. See you next time.